Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to crack the code on something that is literally everywhere, completely surrounding us, yet we barely ever stop to think about it. I'm talking about the rules that totally govern our lives. From the curfews set by your parents to the rules of your favorite video game, all the way up to the actual constitution of a country. Why do we actually have to follow them? Well, let's dive right into this because the answer is honestly a lot more fascinating than you might think.
Look, if you've ever been sitting in class completely frustrated by a strict school dress code, or annoyed that you have to wait until a certain age to get your driver's license, you've probably asked yourself at some point, who makes these rules? And why should I even care? Well, today we're going to zoom way out. We're going to explore the invisible engine behind every single rule in our society. It's a whole field of study, and it's called jurisprudence.
The Romans actually coined this term. It comes from the Latin jurisprudentia. Now, while that literally translates to knowledge of law or skill in law, the ancient Roman thinker Oppian defined it as the knowledge of things divine and human, the science of the just and unjust. So I want you to think of jurisprudence not as some boring list of legal codes, but as a cheat code. It's really the ultimate tool for understanding the philosophy and the deep underlying reasons for why human societies create rules in the first place.
Okay, let's start with part one, the grammar of law.
When looking at how history's greatest legal thinkers view the entire system of rules that shape our everyday reality, thinkers like Thomas Erskine Holland explain that jurisprudence is the eye of the law and the grammar of law. Think about it like English class, right? When you speak or write, grammar is what gives actual structure to your language. Without grammar, your words would just be a chaotic mess of sounds. In that exact same way, jurisprudence is the grammar of society. It helps us see how our world is ordered. It provides the structure that stops human interaction from just devolving into total chaos. It's not just about knowing what the law is, but understanding how it's actually put together. Moving on to Section 2, what is law anyway? Is a law just a bossy command from someone older and more powerful than you, or is it something deeper? Early thinkers like John Austin thought it was mostly just a command. He wore a very strict pair of glasses when looking at society, arguing that a law is basically just an order from a sovereign political authority, which is honestly just a fancy way of saying a boss, a king, or a government. In Austin's eyes, law is simply a rule backed up by the threat of punishment if you disobey. If you don't do your homework, boom, you get detention. If you speed, you get a ticket. For him, it's all about commands and consequences. But, we don't have to look at it quite so strictly. Modern thinkers like Dean Roscoe Pound totally zoomed out. He viewed law as something he called social engineering, and he outlined 4 main purposes of law. It's not just about punishing people. Rules exist to, number 1, maintain order, number 2, protect the status quo or the current state of things, number 3, maximize individual freedom, and number 4, satisfy human needs. So instead of just being a stick to hit you with, law is actually a tool designed to build a society where everyone can thrive as much as possible. Which brings us to Section 3, the pursuit of justice. Now, if a law is just a rule that is enforced by a government, does that mean every rule is automatically fair and just? Not at all. Legal scholars like G.W. Patton and John Salmond draw a massive line between law and justice. They explain that law is just the reality of the rules currently being enforced right now, whether those rules are actually good or, frankly, evil. And history is full of terrible, evil laws that were enforced by governments. Justice, on the other hand, is an ideal. It's a moral perfection founded in human nature that we are constantly chasing, but maybe never perfectly catching. Justice is the measuring stick we use to judge if our laws are actually good. And justice operates on a couple of different levels: distributive and corrective. Distributive justice is all about making sure society's benefits and burdens are shared fairly. But what happens when someone breaks a rule and upsets the balance of society? Say, for example, someone steals your bicycle. At that point, the courts step in, using what is called corrective justice. Their job isn't just to be mean. It's to fix that disequilibrium, to correct the imbalance, and to literally make things right again for you, the victim. Let's dive into Section 4, lenses of legal theory. Over history, different schools of thought have acted like different pairs of glasses you can put on to view how laws are born. If you wear the analytical glasses, like our friend John Austin from earlier, you see rules as things deliberately invented and manufactured by rulers. But if you take those off and put on the historical glasses, your whole worldview changes. Thinkers in the historical school argue that laws aren't just made up in some boardroom. They grow organically out of a society's deep traditions, customs, and history. They argue that law is actually found in the habits of the people, not made by a dictator. This is exactly why you can't just memorize a rule book to understand how the world works. As Lord Radcliffe points out in this awesome quote, we cannot learn law by learning law. To truly understand why a rule exists, like why the drinking age is what it is, or why copyright laws restrict downloading movies, you have to look at the history, the money, the economics, and the sociology behind it. The rule on the paper, that's really just the tip of the iceberg. And this directly brings us to the sociological school. This lens views the legal system as a living, breathing machine. Because society isn't frozen in time, right? The issues you face today, like internet privacy, cyberbullying, or artificial intelligence, none of that existed 50 years ago. The sociological school says that law must be dynamic. It has to constantly adapt to the changing pressures and needs of everyday teenagers, adults, and businesses. It's an ongoing, massive experiment in social engineering.
Finally, Section 5, why does this matter?
So, why should you, just living your everyday life, care about all this dense legal theory? Well, let's test your knowledge with a quick question. Do judges actually make the laws? You might think that politicians in Congress write all the rules and that judges just act like robots, simply reading the rulebook and applying the punishment. But jurisprudence teaches us that it's actually much, much more complicated than that. Are judges just discoverers who find the law and apply it blindly, or are they creators? As U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt argued back in 1908, judges are often our chief lawmakers. Why? Because when they interpret vague rules, they are actually injecting their own social philosophy, their own biases, and their own worldview into their decisions. They aren't robots at all. They are humans literally shaping the future of our society with every single ruling they make. So here is what you should really take away from all of this. Jurisprudence shows us that the rules surrounding us at home, at school, out in the country, they aren't just invisible, unbreakable walls that fell from the sky. They are human creations designed to engineer society and manage our behavior. So the real question I want to leave you with today is this. The next time you run up against a rule, are you going to just blindly follow it because someone told you to? Or will you use this cheat code of jurisprudence to look deeper, to understand the grammar of our society, and to question exactly why that rule exists in the first place? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you next time.